using JavaScript and writing functions. Now, as you can see from the end result, we've got some thumbnails on the page and hyperlinks in those thumbnails, and we want to figure out how to do that using JavaScript. We'll begin here with a simple HTML page, and we'll end up putting some script up in the head. I've got some comments there just to separate my functions, but I haven't written any yet. And you'll notice that my href equals /style.css, and that's because I'm going to be in some folder below my public HTML folder. Not sure what the name of that folder is. I think it's projects. Doesn't really matter for the moment. I'll also put a script in the body because that's where I'm going to execute my script. Now the first function I'm going to create is one called display thumbnail. And display thumbnail, like all functions, two parentheses, and then it has an open brace and a close curly brace. But in that those parentheses, I have two things. A folder is going to be one of them, and an image name is going to be another parameter. Actually, I'm going to have a third one, which is going to be orientation. What do I mean by that? Well, portrait versus landscape is what it comes down to. So I need to know three pieces of information in order to display a thumbnail. I need to know the name of the folder that it's going to be in. That's going to be a folder name below images. I also need to know the name of the image, obviously, and I need to know whether it's a portrait or a landscape. So, first thing I do is an if conditional. And of course, when I do an if conditional, it's got parentheses, it's got an open curly brace and a closed curly brace. And in this case, I'm going to say if orientation equals L. Now that's a capital L, and it's also a double equals, because remember the double equals is a comparison equals. And if it's not an L, it's going to be something else. Now obviously we know it's going to be a P for portrait, but in fact my conditional here is going to say either it's an L or it's not an L, at which point I'm going to assume it's a portrait. So if it's an L, I'm going to have a document.write statement, which document.write, again, open, close parentheses. I do close them with a semicolon. And I begin with a quote, that is a double quotes, and I write image source equals, and then I have a single quote because I want to specify what my source is going to be. And my source is going to be // images, because I have to go from the projects folder up one folder to public HTML to images. And then notice a plus sign here because I'm going to concatenate whatever the name of that folder is. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, that's what I'm going to have. Plus a slash key because I've got to separate that to the file plus the file name, the image name. And in this case, I would normally just put a single quote after that, but in quotes, but I can't do that because what I need to do is add the width equals 80 and height equals 60 because this is a landscape. So my width is greater than my height. So that's if it's an L. Now, what do I do if it's not an L? Well, I'm going to do a document right there as well. So they're only going to have two choices. And this is going to be an image source equals the same thing, folder, image name. The difference, of course, is width equals 60 and height equals 80. So my thumbnails are either 80 by 60 or 60 by 80. And if you've got an L for orientation, you're going to get a landscape. And if you don't have an L, no matter what you have, you're going to get a portrait. That's the logic I'm using. Now down in the body, that's where I'm going to display the thumbnail. And I've got to put my parameters. So as an example, I have a folder called geography. And in my geography folder, I have a vineyardsunset.jpg. And that's going to be a landscape. I'm going to do another display thumbnail, and that's going to be from I have an edits folder, and in that I have a vineyardfishing.jpg, which is a portrait. And when we take a look at those, they're very small at the moment, but we can see them, they're just sitting there. Of course, they're not hyperlinks at all, are they? So let's go back and create, I want to think of the hyperlink as two parts, the opening part and the closing part. And in the open hyperlink, what do you need but a source? You need to know what your href is going to equal. And close hyperlink as well. What are we going to put there? /a. That's in its simplest form how you close a hyperlink. Now to open that hyperlink, we have to have document.write, and we have the a href equals and a single quote, that's a string of data, plus the source, whatever that is, plus we close that single quote and the greater than symbol. So that's the part of the A is the open hyperlink and the /A is the closed hyperlink. So I can now take where I have said display thumbnail, I can open the hyperlink in front of that and close the hyperlink after that. So it actually will create a hyperlink that will go in this case to the worldindex.html page just by clicking on the Vineyard Sunset JPEG thumbnail. I can do the same thing with the Vineyard Fishing and say, well, I'm going to make that a hyperlink to my rollovers index just because I feel like it. So I make an open hyperlink, I display the thumbnail, and then I close the hyperlink. So I'm using JavaScript to take some images, turn them into thumbnails, and make them hyperlinks. The close hyperlink, I've added a couple of line breaks just because it's going to be easier to view this page. So I did a couple of BRs. Now I've added an H1, but notice where I added it. Down the body, after body and before script. Let's think about that. I did an H1, click on the thumbnails below to see other projects. If I had put that one line below the script instead of one line above the script, then I would have had to encapsulate the H1 to /H1 all within a document.write statement. So by keeping it out of the script, I can write just plain HTML. Putting it in the script, I've got to put a document.write surrounding that. And there we can see our thumbnails are now hyperlinks.